information provided in this lecture should not be construed as a claim or representation that any formula, procedure, or product mentioned constitutes a specific cure, palliative or emulative for any condition. The material contained in this lecture has not been reviewed by the FDA and is not for the diagnosis or treatment of any disease. This lecture and the information it contains is for educational purposes only, is not a substitute for individualized guidance from a qualified healthcare professional. Audiences are cautioned not to use any substance, technique, exercise, or product mentioned herein without reviewing it with a qualified healthcare professional to determine if it is appropriate for them.
Okay, thank you everyone for coming to the talk on how to support your immune system naturally. I'm Dr. Davidson. It's a pleasure to have you all here. So I'd like to get started with just a brief prayer. Close our eyes, bow our heads. And thank you, Lord, for this wonderful day you've given us, dear God. Thank you for this, all the wonderful works you're doing in our lives, Lord. We pray that whatever we receive from here, dear God, that it may benefit us, Lord, to serve you, to accomplish your plans for us, to reach our full potential in you, dear God. That we may, Lord, honor you with our bodies, dear God, as we do, Lord, with every part of our life. We thank you for everything. We pray in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. So thank you all for coming. And this, like I said, this is going to be part one of the how to support your immune system naturally. And if you were at church today, you know kind of the reason why I'm doing this. It's because I believe God has called us to honor our bodies, just as to honor Him with our bodies, because our bodies are not our own, right? They were bought at a high price, and therefore we're encouraged to be good stewards of our bodies. So with that in mind, there's not just the physical aspect, not just the spiritual aspect, but the physical as well. So I hope to give you all tools to be able to keep your body healthy and thereby honor God. So this is going to focus specifically on supporting your immune system, but before we get into that, I just want to address kind of what does a healthy lifestyle, in particular, what does a healthy diet look like in general? So according to tremendous body of evidence now that we have, the healthy diet is actually one that is plant-based. So, sorry, a little technical difficulty. So basically, if you look at the scientific evidence, there's now thousands of research articles published that look at the relationship between diet and disease. And what the evidence says, this is not my opinion, I'm just kind of telling you what it says, and I don't want you to take my word for it. I encourage you to look into it yourself. There's some good resources I can recommend that are credible, that you can kind of look into what a healthy diet looks like. But to summarize, it's a whole food plant-based diet. It consists of fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, legumes, whole grains, and it excludes, in other words, it is without any animal products. This includes chicken, beef, meat of any kind, fish, eggs, dairy, all those are animal products. So that's not my opinion, as I said, and I don't want you to take my word for it, but I encourage you to look into it yourself. And for the learning objectives for today, we're gonna gain an understanding of how your lifestyle decisions affect your immune system function, gain an understanding of how specific foods can be used to boost immune function and the ability to apply this knowledge in preparing foods, and to become familiar with simple, low to no cost lifestyle related tools and practices such as sleep hygiene, various therapeutic foods, and other things that we'll actually cover more in part 2 to balance and enhance your immune system. I want to also make this talk as interactive as possible, encourage audience to participate. So I'll be asking you guys questions, so I hope you're excited about that.
Woo!
Okay, so here's the first question, and who can tell me one of the reasons why we need an immune system? Why is the immune system important? You can just raise your hand. Yeah, go ahead.
Keep us from getting sick.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Okay. So in other words, it keeps pathogens, and I'll be using this term a lot. Pathogen just means any organism, whether it's a bacteria, virus, fungi, parasite that can cause disease, right? So we want to keep the pathogens or the bad guys out of our bodies. Good. Who can name another reason? Yes, very important for some of us. Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, to destroy cancer cell?
Yes,
cells?
excellent. Yeah. So not many people realize this, but having a healthy immune system is key. It's critical to having to preventing cancer.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
When you say it distinguishes different cells, so the body knows when like there's cancer cells in it, or
Yes.
forming in it,
Yes.
and has the ability to destroy those?
Yes, it does that regularly.
Oh, it
While
does?
you were at church today, your body was hunting down any kind of cells that are not working correctly. Any
Right.
damage in the DNA that predisposes them to mutate in a cancer-like fashion. It will signal those, and cells will come in. We're going to talk about that and eliminate those cells from your body.
So
So-
eating wrong kind of encourages that cell to grow instead of.
Exactly.
being
Yeah.
killed
So
off.
diet can be either cancer-promoting or
Right.
cancer-preventing.
Uh-huh,
So exactly. So there's on and off switches in our body, in our
Right.
genetics that will control all that. And yeah, we'll discuss a little bit more about those specific cells that are key in eliminating tumors and tumor cells and precancerous cells. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So keeps out, fights off pathogens, prevents and destroys cancer cells, assists the body tissue repair and renewal processes, and allows tolerance of outside world. You know, this is important also because there's autoimmune conditions. Often the body cannot, you know, in some cases recognize or differentiate between our own cells and foreign cells. And what happens is it attacks our own cells as well. So having a healthy immune system is not just important to fight off pathogens, but to prevent it from attacking our own cells as well.
miscommunication.
Okay, so we're going to talk about how to handle infections, and there's different ways to do this. You know, today when you go to your doctor's office, you know, if you have like a respiratory infection, what do you often expect? What do you get out of that? Does anyone want to like volunteer and answer?
Medication.
What's that?
Medication,
Yeah, medication that does what?
it kills off the bad cells.
Okay, so antibiotics, for
Right.
example, that's good. Anything else? What else do we expect from if we have a cold or a flu from our doctor?
Knowledge.
What's that?
Advice
Advice on.
how to get better.
Okay, well, you can expect that, but I mean, the thing is, how to get better. Okay, so they'll tell you stay in bed, get rest and fluids, right?
Right.
So you already know that. So where do you need to go? Well, okay, so there's a few things. There's drugs that kill off, say, actually antibiotics, by the way, they kill off bacteria. If you have a cold, that's a virus. Okay, so that's not going to help.
Right.
Nonetheless, it's prescribed to a lot of people with viral infections like colds and flus
Right.
because the patient, first of all, the doctor doesn't know how to do much else. They're not trained, you know.
Right.
So, also the patient wants, you know, thinks it's going to help them in some way, so they often insist on that.
Right.
So there's two sides to that coin, and then, you know, also you're given drugs as well to suppress the symptoms.
Right.
Now, keep in mind that suppressing symptoms is not the same as addressing the root cause of the problem,
Right.
right? Because you can have a festering wound on your arm, and you can get a medication that suppresses the symptoms. That's like putting a Band-Aid on that festering
Yes.
wound.
Right.
But the wound will continue to fester. You didn't correct the underlying problem, right? And that's what we'll talk about. That's the functional model to addressing immune challenges and really any other health problems. So the conventional model, what you often get with when you go to your doctor's office nowadays, it's based on this germ theory of infectious disease. It's a flawed theory, and it goes back to this Italian gentleman, mid-16th century, and he proposed that these infectious diseases like colds, flus, etc., they're caused by organisms, infectious organisms that actually cause these diseases. So it was later developed by Louis Pasteur, other scientists, but see, so that part, it's flawed because it's incomplete. That's only part of what happens. So you can have 100 people, and you can, they've done experiments like that, and you inject or squirt up cold virus or flu virus into 100 people into their nostrils. Do you think all of those 100 people will get a flu or a cold?
No.
What determines who gets a flu and who doesn't?
Better immune system.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's the other side of that puzzle, right? Is the host immune system will be critically important in determining who gets sick, who doesn't, right? And that's what this model fails to address. So we'll be talking about that in detail. So there's, again, killing bugs with drugs versus supporting natural immune defenses. And I came up with this acronym called WASSUP. Okay, so it's just a kind of a funny way for you guys to remember the functional aspects of supporting the immune system. In other words, like in a comprehensive sort of way. So it stands for, I'll go through it real quick and then I'll go back. W, weapons targeting. A, augmenting natural barriers. S, squeezing out the bad guys. U, upregulating natural immunity. And then promoting tissue repair and regeneration. So, what does weapons targeting mean? It means that in the functional model, right, so you can actually specifically target and destroy pathogenic organisms, right, those that cause disease, and leave our own cells and our own good bacteria alone. For example, take something like oregano essential oil. It has activity against various pathogens, like a number, like E. coli, for instance, disease-causing organisms, and it will destroy those microbes while leaving our own cells alone. So preferentially destroys the pathogenic, the disease-causing organisms. Versus if you take something like an antibiotic, especially one that's broad spectrum, it's like a nuclear bomb exploding inside of you, right? It wipes out everything, whether it's a good bacteria, bad bacteria, good organism, bad organism, no discrimination, right? And what happens is our own immune cells can get wiped out as well. So that's the difference there. There's a lot of adverse effects which I'll cover in more detail. So it's not discriminatory. It's oftentimes it will kill good and bad both in your body. Then we have A. So this augmenting natural barriers and systems of elimination. So our body has all sorts of defense mechanisms to actually help us fight off infections. So for example, when you get a cold, right, what does your body begin to do? You begin to produce mucus, right? You begin to cough, trying to cough it up. These are all defense mechanisms, right? So the pathogens, they get trapped in the mucus, and then they're cilia in their respiratory tract that with their little hairs, they bring it up and allow us to get rid of it, right? So mucous membranes or natural barriers are loaded, swimming with immune cells there that actively target and destroy these pathogens. So there's a few herbs I give examples of that help us do this. Garlic, for example, it helps to break up mucus in our body and help us to cough it up. It has potent and broad antimicrobial activity. It's active against viruses, bacteria, fungi, parasites. So it has very broad microbial killing action, but it leaves our own cells alone. It's only active against, it only destroys the pathogenic organisms. Garlic, they've done studies on this. So just to give you an example, if you compare people who take an antiviral drug. Let's say you have a flu and you go to your doctor, your hospital. There's an antiviral drug that will reduce the duration of a flu by half a day. So from 5 days, it'll go down to 4.5 days. Now, they did a study on garlic in people with colds and respiratory infections. Garlic reduces symptom duration in a cold from 5 days down to 1.5 days. So that's the difference. So that's 3.5 days versus half a day. Garlic versus the antiviral drug, right? So just to give you an example of how potent it is. Ginger also has various immune-enhancing properties. It helps to control fever. It helps to promote tissue repair and regeneration. It helps with promoting anti-inflammatory action and getting rid of mucus as well, expectorant action. So yeah, these are some key herbs. And then as to squeezing out the bad guys, this we'll talk about more in detail in part 2. But basically, if you imagine this room, if it was stacked with people, right, just shoulder to shoulder, and we're all good guys here, we're all men of God, men and women of God, right?
Right.
Can I get an amen? So we're all, this whole room is full of people stacked shoulder to shoulder, right? There's no room for the enemy, for anyone, any bad guy to come in here, because it's full, the building is full, right? And that's kind of how your body works, in particular in the gut, where there is a whole unique ecology where we have all these good bacteria that supply us with nutrients, they're part of our immune system, they process various metabolic reactions, and so these good guys, if we have enough of them, there'll just be no room, they'll squeeze out the bad guys. So we'll talk more about that in part 2. And then upregulating innate immunity, and this relates to our own immune cells. An example of this is cruciferous vegetables. Now, who can give me an example of what a cruciferous vegetable is?
Broccoli.
Good, but you didn't say What is? It's like Jeopardy numbers. Okay.
Maybe broccoli?
Yeah, broccoli, good.
Like spinach, maybe? Or
Yeah, well,
kale-
spinach
or
is a
kale.
green leafy vegetable, but it's not.
Kale?
Kale is one, yeah. Anyone else want to name a cruciferous vegetable? Cabbage. Good.
Brussels sprouts.
You get extra credit. Yes, Brussels sprouts. Good. So those are all examples of cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, watercress, kale. They're all cruciferous vegetables. They're in the cabbage family, right? Cruciferous is cabbage family vegetables. And so they all actually activate various immune cells in our body that then go on and become strong like soldiers to eliminate these bad guys, these viruses and bacteria and these pathogens from our bodies. And then P is promoting tissue repair and regeneration. This is also critical because once you get exposed to some kind of pathogen, it will, the first step in the invasion process of your body, it'll disrupt a barrier that prevents it from getting in, like the mucous membranes in our throat, in our sinuses, in our nose, in our GI tract, in our urinary tract. So you have to actually address this and promote repair and restoration of this mucous membrane. And so there's herbs and plants that help us do this, like golden seal. So, if your throat is really irritated, these herbs help to soothe them. They help to restore the integrity of that mucous membrane to prevent further invasion, right? And to promote elimination of those pathogens. Okay, so I'm gonna do a little pop quiz. Who can tell me, I turned that off on purpose, so don't worry. Who can tell me what what's up is? Just briefly, or at least one letter. Don't look at your handouts. I can see you cheating there. Name a letter and then tell me briefly what it is. Yes?
Weapons.
Yeah, so that's one of them. Supporting natural barriers and systems of elimination, so that's S.
Regulating. something.
Regulating innate immunity, good.
Yes.
That's U.
Squeezing out the bad guys.
Squeezing out the bad guys, good. Come on, guys, there's two letters.
Weapons.
Weapons, yeah, weapons targeting the bad guys specifically. And last one,
Promoting teaching repair.
excellent. And what does that spell? Everyone all together. Excellent, okay. It's back. Okay, so conventional, so we're gonna talk about what the conventional model is and versus, so the conventional model, that's what basically typically happens when you go to your doctor, right? And the pros and cons of that model. So one pro is it has potential to resolve the infection, maybe necessary in some cases if you're really sick, you have multiple, there's complications, you're septic, where the bacteria enters and invades tissues and organs, then you might need, it's worth considering at least going to the hospital, supportive care, antibiotics. So that's a pro. But, and it's typically fast and convenient, and that's what Americans like, right? We don't want to wait 5 minutes, we want our brain surgery in 15 minutes. No. It's more like Nick medicine, right? So we're all in a rush to get to, I don't know where, but we don't know what we want or what we need, but we want it fast. That's what matters to Americans, right? So that's the American standard. And so this is kind of what you get, if you go to your doctor, typically you can spend maybe 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes with you. You get a prescription for some cough syrup and antibiotic, and then you're off, right? But is this ideal? So what are some of the cons? So again, it fails to address the underlying cause of the infection. So, why did the infection happen? Maybe there was something going on. Were you under stress? Maybe your immune system wasn't functioning the way it should be because of stress or lack of sleep. Maybe you have a nutrient deficiency. So maybe you're like low in zinc, for instance, which is key in some immune signaling processes. So, none of that was investigated or addressed. Only the symptoms were suppressed, and then, so there's really no time to do this in the conventional model. Another con is that it may actually damage your immune system, and then that increases the risk of more serious later infections, called superinfections, that are then going to be resistant to these antibiotics. Because if you give someone an antibiotic and you kill off every bacteria except one, and then that replicates, right? Well, that same gene that allows it to survive is going to be passed on, and then it puts you at greater risk for having an antibiotic resistant infection later on, which the doctors which doctors can't do anything about. You have a question?
As far as like antibiotics, is it if you stop the antibiotic, you can get like the same problem also?
Yes.
Okay.
So once you start, I don't recommend stopping
Yeah.
unless you have a very compelling reason. Without medical advice, don't do that.
Yeah.
So so basically it's estimated, the CDC has estimated that in a few decades, all our antibiotics, all our anti-infective drugs will become completely useless, right? And why is that? The same reason I mentioned just now, right? If you give someone an antibiotic, they have an infection, it wipes out most of those pathogens and leaves just a few alone, they're gonna have resistance to that drug. And there's not a lot of new antibiotics coming down the pipeline. It is not profitable to make them actually. So, at that point, what are we gonna do? No one knows. And there's people in the hospital, which I see now, that have multi-drug resistant infections, right? A lot of them do have these infections that are multi-drug resistant. In other words, none of the antibiotics actually are effective against them. So what happens, they're put on multiple very toxic antibiotics in the hope that it'll at least, allow them to have a chance, but it's anyone's guess.
Yeah.
So, this is, so another thing is that these antibiotics, they kill off our own immune cells. So next time we have an infection, our immune system is going to be weakened. It's not going to be in such a great position to handle it. There's a lot of adverse effects. I'm not, like I said, it doesn't mean that we should never take these drugs. They have their own use, but the way they're given now, it's like water, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no consideration of whether to give it or not. Everyone gets it.
Yeah.
Right.
So that decision has to be weighed carefully because you're doing damage. You have potential to do some good, but you have a lot of potential to do some damage as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's collateral damage, as I mentioned, to good bacteria, in particular in our gut. It leads to antimicrobial resistance for the reason I discussed. And there's many other adverse drug reactions associated with these drugs. So those are all cons. Now we're going to talk about the functional model. Okay, so addressing it from a comprehensive point of view, addressing the underlying cause. Okay, so what are the pros? It has potential to resolve infection by using what's up, right, which we just covered. So the same kind of pro as the conventional model. It involves investigating and addressing the underlying cause of the infection. So that's, again, asking why did this person get sick? Is it genetic? Maybe their immune system was weak and maybe they didn't get enough sleep. Maybe they need some kind of immune support. Something in their lifestyle as well, maybe a healthier diet to help them be more resilient to these infections. And there's little to no collateral damage. So those are all very good things. Collateral damage meaning good bacteria, the good guys are not harmed. But some of the cons are, first of all, more time and effort required from both the doctor and patient, right? So it does take time to investigate why a person got sick, how to prevent them, how to support their immune system and their various organ systems to prevent this from happening again. So you have to kind of figure out, well, did this person maybe, like I said, maybe this person has a diet that puts them at a great risk because of deficiency for certain nutrients that are key in immune function. Maybe they are under a great deal of stress. So, and then working through that, giving them tools to actually overcome these challenges. So that's just one con, but then actually it has quite a lot of other pros, this holistic or functional model. It focuses on improving immune system health and thereby prevents future reinfections. It reduces the risk of a multitude of other diseases, including cancer, autoimmune disease, respiratory disease, and diseases such as asthma, for example. And lifestyle factors that specifically improve immune function also tend to improve overall health. So it's not just your immune system, but many organ systems that benefit from this. So today we're going to talk about nutrition and sleep hygiene. And in part 2, we'll cover supplements, exercise, stress, state of mind. Any questions about any of that stuff before we go on? So, and the mind-body connection as well. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about, first food, is what you've been eating today, hopefully. If you haven't, feel free to get some. The key is broccoli.
I love
Right?
that.
So, actually, there's been a number of studies on broccoli now. So, you know, you have to imagine, that the outside world is crawling with dangerous microorganisms, right? Everywhere we go, there's pathogens, people, you know, whether it's like from people or, you know, any surface. Actually, you know, even while we were walking to church today, there's all kinds of things floating in the air, and there's, you know, things from our food that we take in. Our body didn't even tell you about this, but it's like, you know, got eliminated all of these, did a little battle inside of you. You didn't even know what was happening, right? So now, what some of you may not know is that the greatest exposure we have to the outside world, it's not through our skin. Does anyone know where the greatest exposure we have to the outside world, to these pathogens? Anyone?
Breathing.
Your lungs.
Breathing.
Okay,
lungs.
breathing, lungs. Anyone else? What we eat. That's exactly right. See, the pastor has wisdom. Yeah, exactly. So the greatest exposure we have to the outside world is a single layer of cells within our intestine. A single layer of cells. It's thinner than the sheet of paper, right? And it separates our sterile bloodstream from these dangerous microorganisms. So obviously we need a very sophisticated immune system to prevent these pathogens from getting into our bodies, into our bloodstream. So, you know, so I want to ask you guys now, why do you think God created us in such a way? Well, I'll ask you in just a second, just after I go through a few more things. So we have these immune cells that are kind of frontline defenders that are, they're called intraepithelial lymphocytes, and they're in our gut. They help maintain and repair intestinal barrier and serve as a kind of a front guard against these dangerous organisms. And these cells are covered with these receptors. You can think of them like little locks. So for decades, scientists have been searching for keys to unlock the might of these soldiers that we have, these super soldiers. And then a breakthrough. Mother was right all along, it turns out. Right about what?
Broccoli.
Exactly. Nothing gets past me. Okay. So, cruciferous vegetables, kale, cauliflower, cabbage, bok choy, etc., contain compounds that are transformed by our stomach acid to become keys for these receptors, unlocking the might of these intraepithelial lymphocytes, these immune cells that protect us. Cruciferous vegetables are required to sustain healthy numbers of advanced foot soldiers. And you can think of them like specifically designed army rations. Whoops. That's okay. So, yeah, so they protect us. They actually activate these advanced soldiers to fight off these invaders. So they're like, you know, kind of like activating our own immune system cells to become like superheroes. So why do we require them, do you think, to keep our immune system robust? Why do we require eating broccoli to stay healthy, something like broccoli? So
It's gotta have something in it well, it's the keys to those receptors, right?
yeah, so why do we think, you know, God made us in such a way that we require something like broccoli to keep us healthy?
Because we're supposed to be eating vegetables.
Because vegetables are good for you,
Yes, yes.
as our parents told us, our mom.
Yeah, well, think about it. If you go back, you know, in human history, what do you imagine, like, you know, people ate throughout most of history? What do you guys think it is?
Fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, it was mostly various herbs, tubers, like nuts, various green leafy things, right? So think about this. When we come into contact with the outside world, right, our greatest exposure is in our gut, right? And so at exactly the time when our immune system needs to be at its height, at its peak, there are these compounds in the very food that we're kind of designed to eat that support and upregulate our immune system and prevent the outside world, right, these pathogens that are covering this food from actually invading our bodies. So it's a very wise kind of design when you think about it, you know, that God made us this way. So immune system needs to be upregulated during meal times, right, to keep pathogens out in particular, because that's when we're gobbling down a whole bunch of these invaders. For most of human history, meals consist largely of dark green leafy plants, in other words, cruciferous vegetables. And so there was a study that compared the effects of consuming broccoli versus like alfalfa sprouts, for instance. What do you think they found? Like, So they looked at, they actually gave volunteers intranasal flu virus. So they squirted flu virus up their nose, and then they had people for, I think a month before, eat either broccoli or the alfalfa sprouts, right? So who do you think did better?
Broccoli.
Yeah, exactly. So alfalfa sprout group experienced a spike in flu virus replication. Broccoli group was protected and viral replication was minimized. So you can see the graph shows the result here. The viral replication, oh, it doesn't go that, but okay. So the spike there, that's the viral replication after alfalfa, in the alfalfa group. And you can see in the green line is the viral replication, the amount of viruses that replicate in the body in the broccoli group. So you can see it's a lot lower. It indicates protection. So drug companies are now trying to synthesize chemicals that activate these receptors, these keys, right, in our immune cells to make them like superheroes. So they're continuing to search for this mythical magic bullet. So it's like in the pharmaceutical industry, they're always looking for something called a magic bullet. That's something like a panacea, one molecule that can cure every disease, or at least every one kind or class of diseases. So now the problem with that theory is that it's not so simple. Diseases are not. There's no such molecule that can cure every disease. There's no single compound made in a laboratory that's going to be able to do this, because the thing is, most our diseases, they're complex things. They have multiple biochemical pathways through which they occur, right? And there's many different processes involved. So if you take a disease, say like diabetes, for instance, there's multiple things going wrong, right? God designed us in such a way that we have all these built-in redundancy mechanisms, meaning that if one system fails, we have other systems that take over, that turn on and take over to protect us. Something like broccoli, it has all these compounds that strengthen various processes, various organ systems, and biochemical processes that help us to be healthy. And it has thousands of compounds in it that do this. So it's not just a single molecule, right? It's all these various pathways that occur at the same time that work on different processes in our body, different organs that help us to do this. And thinking you could do this with a single molecule, instead they might do better looking for a magic beanstalk. Okay, so I'll take questions now.
Oh, okay. Is cooking the broccoli or the cruciferous vegetables, is that reduce its effectiveness at all? Is it better raw, or is there any difference?
Yes, great question. Okay, so there is a reduction in some of the active compounds. So there's if you have any mustard seed powder and you sprinkle that onto your broccoli, it will actually preserve this enzyme. So right before you eat it, sprinkle some on your broccoli, and it will actually reactivate these enzymes that will convert the precursor to the active compound, and you'll get all the benefit, even if you cook it. So that was a study that was really cool to find out about. It was in the scientific literature, showing that although cooking broccoli, boiling it, it can reduce some of the active compounds in broccoli that have the health benefits. But just adding a pinch of mustard seed powder will restore that activity.
After it's been cooked?
Yes, before you eat it, yes. After it's been cooked, just add some in there. It'll, I don't, I can go into the science if you like, but, but basically it activates those compounds.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What about not to get off the subject of broccoli, but what about the benefits of pomegranate seeds?
Yeah.
I heard that was also an active ingredient in help building the immune system.
Yeah, definitely. It's full of antioxidant type molecules. It has a lot of nutrients, so that's a good food too. I mean, any fruit, any vegetable, they all have their own benefits.
Right.
It's just I'm going to be talking about basically things that have been studied.
Right.
There's published, primary literature, like scientists have studied them, and these are discoveries. So I'm just presenting the discoveries here.
Right, got it.
Yeah. So, I talked about in the broccoli story, I talked about the immune system's vanguard, right? These advanced foot soldiers. And it's our body's, like I said, our body's greatest exposure to the outside world is during meal times, right? It's at the surface of our intestinal mucous membrane. It's not through our skin. mucous membranes line actually our nose, our mouth, digestive, urinary, reproductive systems. So all of these are, play a key role in protecting us from pathogens. The lining of our gut alone covers more area than a full basketball court, and most of it is only a single cell layer thick, like I mentioned. The distance between our bloodstream and dangerous pathogens, like viruses, it's less than the thickness of a single sheet of paper. So if you were to lay these cells end to end in our intestinal mucosa, they would cover a basketball court of area. That's how compact they are. So obviously our body has to have a sophisticated immune defense system to keep them out. And our first line of defense includes something called type A antibodies. The scientific term is immunoglobulin. Type A antibodies are found in mucous membranes, all the ones I mentioned, right? So they're found in our gut, in our respiratory system, our mouth. They can bolster the first line of defense. So we can bolster our, these antibodies, these type A antibodies, using specific foods and herbs. And now I'll talk about mushrooms and how they can actually help us do this. So So edible mushrooms, they have a number of beneficial health effects. They're immune-enhancing, anti-inflammatory, they have anti-cancer properties, a wide range of benefits actually. There's compounds in mushrooms that are not found in any other food. It's just they're valuable for general health and also for immune system support. I'll just go through an example study showing mushrooms, how adding mushrooms improve immune function. So what they did is they took study participants and split them into two groups. One group ate mushrooms, the other didn't. So one group ate the normal diet plus mushrooms, other group just ate normal diet without mushrooms. So it was a cup of white button mushrooms daily for a week. And what did they find? Immune function improved in the group eating the mushrooms, indicated about a 50% increase in their antibody type A levels in their saliva, right? So their antibodies, the number of antibodies went up. And this was, so salivary IgA, that's the type A antibodies in the saliva, right? It actually stayed elevated even 2 weeks after they stopped eating the mushrooms. And then it fell down to the levels where it started off with. So, it shows you that you can't just eat an immune-enhancing food like mushrooms once, say, a month, right? You have to make it a regular part of your diet to have regular benefits from it. Okay, any questions about that? Okay.
Do the mushrooms have to be raw or can you cook them and?
No, that was a cooked white button mushrooms, yeah. I mean, you can eat them raw as well if you like. They have, benefits that way too, but there's no worries in cooking them. And not just white button. This is just an example, but there's, let's say, Chinese mushrooms, shiitake, maitake, reishi, for example. They're also very beneficial for immune function. Okay, so we're going to talk about fruits and veggies in general and how they support immune function. So they did a study where they gave pregnant women, and by the way, pregnant women, they're one of those groups that are at risk from severe complications from infections. So if you get, let's say, a UTI, right, at any time, it's unpleasant, but there's no, it's not as serious as when you get it during pregnancy, because that actually poses a risk to the child as well as to the mother. It's serious in either way, but when you're pregnant, the pregnant individuals are at higher risk, they're more susceptible to the infections. Same with respiratory infections. So what they did in the study is they gave pregnant women, various servings of fruits and vegetables. So as I said, something as seemingly harmless as a common cold caught during the first trimester of pregnancy is associated with birth defects, likely due to the fever. And a study showed that women who consume more fruits and vegetables had reduced risk of respiratory infections during pregnancy. The protective effect was seen in the women who ate about 9 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. So this is, this is a considerable amount. It's like a bowl, let's say, of various vegetables, fruit in there. You can't just eat an apple and expect to get this benefit, is the point. right? So the group that ate only 5 servings of fruit or 4 of veggies per day, they may have met, so you might have heard like commercials on this 5 a day to keep the doctor away, like 5 servings, fruits and veggies a day. But it's, okay, it's a start, but it's not quite enough, to get these benefits. So the benefits seem to come from a combination of these foods. It's not just one food. What happens is there's many different phytochemicals, various compounds, nutrients in different foods that then can, if you eat a variety, they will act together to support your immune function and your health in general. So it's actually and oftentimes it's a synergistic relationship. We're going to talk about this concept of synergy, which is the concept. Who knows what synergy is? Does anyone want to explain it?
That together and work together good.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else?
It's on the back of Toyotas in some way that they. Right? No?
Okay. That's an interesting hypothesis. And then, anyone else venture a guess? Well, okay. So synergy is this concept in mathematics that if you take one component and then combine it in a smart way with another component, that 1 + 1 will not equal 2, it'll equal something like 10. So the effect you get, the net effect from combining 2 different foods or herbs or 2 different things is much greater than either of them alone or than the sum total of them, together. So in other words, basically, I'll give you an example of this. You take something like turmeric, right? And turmeric is also like a healthy spice on Indian cuisine. And so you get benefit from it, which I include in my diet every day, just from eating like a pinch in your, like I say, have a teaspoonful in any meal. Has all sorts of health benefits, like anti-cancer properties. But see, what happens is in the body, there's a little spike in the active components of the turmeric. They did studies on this, and then it goes back down. But when you combine it with something like a pinch of black pepper, that turmeric active components will stay elevated. First of all, they'll go up 10 times higher, and they'll stay elevated for longer.
Yeah.
So, both black pepper and turmeric, they're good for you, but when you combine them together, they're much better for you than what you would expect just from the combination of their effects. So they work in synergy. So 1 + 1 is not 2, it's 10, right? In this case, so that's an example. So since our immune system declines with age, the elderly individuals are also a group that are susceptible to various infections, including respiratory infections and their complications, such as pneumonia. You see a lot of these patients in the hospital. And actually, the respiratory infection is the 7th leading cause of death in the elderly. So it's quite important for them. And it's also the reason that they have an inadequate immune response to vaccination. So past the age of around 65 or so, what the study shows that it's actually useless for elderly people to get like a flu shot because their immune system is at the point where it's not strong enough to respond to the antigens in the flu vaccine and become bolstered by that, so they don't have any benefit. So there's no, but if we actually support our immune system, when we get a vaccination, it will actually boost the immune response. It'll increase the benefit we get from that vaccine. So so in other words, you have more people that will actually be able to have a successful immune response to that vaccine. So we'll cover some of that stuff later.
Even over 65?
Yeah, even over 65. Yeah, I'll be talking about a study. So the study in elderly individuals 65 to 85 years old showed that increasing fruit and vegetable intake from 2 to almost 5 servings per day for a month resulted in 80% improvement in the response to the pneumonia vaccine. That's pneumococcal. And so what they did is they split it into 2 groups, and you have the results show that 12 of 40 individuals reached their target antibody levels considered successful immune response to vaccination in the 5-a-day group compared to only 2 individuals in the 2-a-day group. So you have 12 out of 40 versus 2 out of around 40 reaching a successful response to immunization, depending on how many fruits and vegetables they ate prior to that. So, but could you imagine how robust their immune response might have become had they reached 10 or 12 servings a day, right? So this is just a table showing this. You can see in the 5-a-day group, 12 people out of 40 there reached successful immune response versus only 2 out of 38 reaching successful immune response in the 2-a-day group. Okay, any questions about that?
What's your opinion on V8 juice?
Well, so let's see. I have to. I think there's different kinds. So I have to read the ingredients. But in general, vegetable juices are good, except that they have sugar added often. So try to get the ones with low sugar, low sodium, low, no preservatives if possible, no chemical additives. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna go on. So Chlorella is actually a type of algae. So it's a supplement, and I'll just cover this as an example, but we're going to be talking more about supplements in part 2. It's this green, green algae, unicellular organism. You can get it as a tablet or a powder. It's sold in health food stores, online. And there's studies that show that supplementing with Chlorella can improve immune function, again, by increasing secretion of type A antibodies, those antibodies that line our mucous membranes. An additional study showed that Chlorella supplementation can also increase IgA levels in the breast milk of mothers. So this is a double benefit, not just for the mothers, but for their children who are breastfeeding as well. And another study done in athletes showed that it was able to prevent the type A antibodies from declining as a result of very vigorous exercise. So that's another concept that I'll go through quickly, but exercise, I'll cover this in part 2 in detail, but exercise basically, it improves our immune function at the right dose of it, at the right amount of it. And for most of us, this means as much as possible. But when you get to really, really serious, like really heavy workout, like athletes, marathon runners, very intense workout, at some point it's going to decline, right? So with really strenuous exercise, you get a decline in immune function. And so this study showed that by supplementing with Chlorella, they were able to prevent this decline. So like I said, the right amount of exercise improves immune function, and the right amount, by the way, is a lot more than we think. It's like, if you do 2 hours every day, that's great. So don't think the right amount is like half an hour, 3 days a week. No, you can do. So there's studies, I'll talk about this in part 2, but studies that show that 90 minutes a day is better than an hour a day, which is better than 30 minutes a day, and so on. Okay? So overexercising have the opposite effect, but only in very strenuous activity. So the study indicates, so this overexercising only really applies to athletes and endurance athletes. The study indicates that certain foods like Chlorella and mushrooms can ameliorate or improve this immune decline as a result of overtraining. So again, a J-shaped curve, meaning that with like 2 hours a day, you get good enhancement in immune function, and then with extreme athletes, the immune function begins to decline. Okay, any questions about that?
I don't have a question, but I have the over-exercising. It says over-exercising can have the opposite effect.
Mm-hmm.
And you said something about 30 to 90 minutes a day or 2 hours.
Okay, you can do, so this over-exercising only applies to athletes. If you're not an athlete, don't even worry about that part.
I'm not, but I'm just listening to what you said about the 2 hours a day. It's excessive.
No, it's
unless
not.
Unless you're an athlete, like you said.
No, it's not excessive. 2 hours a day is good. If you can do 2 hours a day, yeah, that'll do. If you do that, no, I wouldn't, okay, right now, if you do 10 minutes once a week, I wouldn't go ahead and start doing 2 hours a day. You have to do it gradually, right? You can't start off, you have to train your body slowly.
Yeah. Now, I'm only saying this because I know that for the heart rate is up after like 20 minutes of cardiovascular
Right.
exercise.
Yeah.
So then once the heart rate gets up, depending on what else you're doing, you don't believe that 45 minutes to an hour is not sufficient exercise for the average person, not an athlete.
Yeah, that's good, like if you can do that every day, but the study show, like I said, I'll talk about this in the next part, but 90 minutes is even better. So those people who did 90 minutes versus doing an hour had, you know, greater health benefits still. So, does that answer your question? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
I don't know if you wanna cover this, wait till next part, but does it matter if it's like, high intensity or what type of exercise, whether lifting weights or
Yes,
running?
any kind, you know, is good than none at all. It's like, so for most people, the most important kind is aerobic exercise where your heart rate is elevated, you know, cardiovascular fitness. So it puts a strain on your heart, on your respiratory system, and this all promotes, you know, general health by, you know, activating many different good things in your body. But, you know, if you want to do weight training in addition to that, all the better. Okay, so we'll go on if there's other questions. Okay, so we're talking about blueberries now. Okay, so blueberries, they have these compounds in them that activate these immune cells. And these immune cells, they're called natural killer cells, or NK cells for short. They are also one of our body's first line of defenses. They actually go around and hunt down cancer cells in our body and destroy them. And you know, they're also prevent viral invasion. They, you know, attack and eliminate viruses. So they're really key defenders. So the study done in athletes, about 1.5 cup of blueberries per day for 6 weeks. And what they found was dramatically reduced the drop in these immune cells number and function that they would get from really strenuous exercise. So what happened was in the group that ate the blueberries, these cells doubled in the exercise group. Sorry, in the blueberry group. So the number of these cells actually doubled, and there was a similar study using goji berries that actually did not show this effect. So, you know, the type of food, the type of berry will make a difference. You know, although goji berries have their own benefits, but in particular blueberries for NK cell support. This is a graph showing like the results. Basically, you have they started off. So this is the blueberry group. You can see they had twice as much of these immune cells as the non-blueberry group over here. And so when they did their strenuous exercise, although it went down in both groups, the blueberry group stayed much higher than the non-blueberry group, right? So it was protective for them. Okay, and then acai berries, right? That's another type of berry I mentioned. It's a little bit expensive, but you know, by the way, if you can get the fresh berry, it's way better than the juice because you really don't know what the juice. I'll cover more about this in part 2, but basically when you're buying like, you know, a juice drink or a supplement, you really don't know what's in there. Just because the label on the bottle says something doesn't mean that's actually in there. They did studies on this, you know, looking at, for example, 20 or 30 different kinds of juice brands, only 5 of them actually had any juice in there. You know, so it's up to. Anyway, so eating the whole food is better. In one study, an acai berry concentration similar to what one might get in one's bloodstream after consuming them was dripped on these cancer cells, leukemia cancer cells, and there was a great increase in cancer cell death. It was about twice the increase seen after similar concentration of hibiscus tea were used. So actually they dripped acai berry extract on these cancer cells, and then they did the same thing with hibiscus tea. And both of them actually, so there was a greater increase in cancer cell death. You know, both of these helped, but there was a greater increase with the acai extract. And then another study showed that very low concentrations of acai can increase the capacity of our white cells. The OBCs are white blood cells. And they're like little Pac-Man guys. They go around chewing up various, you know, pathogens and spitting them out and like getting them out of our bodies. So this extract was able to kind of, you know, like Pac-Man on steroids, where they gobble up the little square and then they chew up the ghosts more quickly. It's kind of fascinating to watch it under a microscope, like little gobbly guys. Anyway, so after a little over an hour, the white cells sprinkled with acai powder gobbled up nearly 50% more of the invading cells. And this is a graphical representation of the result, where you have acai berries. They increase the, you know, various concentrations of acai. There was increased cell mortality, basically, increased cancer cell mortality. And with the hibiscus tea, again, the graph going down shows that number of cells survive, the cancer cells surviving declined as hibiscus tea was And this is the effect on the ability to chew up these cancer cells. So with acai, concentrations going higher, you have more chomping, right? And more getting rid of bad guys. Any questions about that? Okay, so we're gonna cover cardamom and black pepper. So these are two like household spices. Very easy to get, not expensive, easy to use, but few people know about their benefits. So studies show that culinary spices, cardamom and black pepper also seem to boost the NK cell activity. Without NK cells, spices have no effect on cancer cells, but when the spices were added to NK cells, those are our own immune cells, they greatly augmented their ability to destroy cancer cells. Although each spice had a boosting effect, both spices together work better than either alone. So again, this is the concept of synergy. And you can see what happened is with cardamom, just cardamom added to the NK cells, they were able to eat up more of these cancer cells with increasing cardamom levels. Same thing with black pepper. You add a little black pepper, the more you add, the better our immune cells get rid of the cancer cells. But then you put them together, cardamom plus black pepper, and what happens is greater cancer cell mortality than either alone. So greater fighting power, and that's synergy. So, but then imagine if we ate blueberries on top of that to double the number, not just their activity, but the number of these NK cells too. So there's synergistic health benefits can be achieved by combining specific foods, herbs, and spices. Broccoli, blueberries, mushrooms, chlorella, cardamom, black pepper, anyone? That's what's on the menu. Yes, you have a question?
On the TV shows, they're always showing that they grind their black pepper, and I use the pepper from the can. Is there a really more benefit if you grind it yourself, or is it the same deal?
If it's like not ground, like a little kernel, right, and you swallow that, it's likely not to be absorbed very well. So the more ground it is, the easier it is for the body to get absorbed.
So then the one in the little can is the best one?
You want to buy either you grind it yourself or it's pre-ground, but it should be like a fine particulate form, right, to get better absorption. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Kiwis. Who likes kiwis? Nice. All right. Well, I have good news for all you kiwi lovers out there. Studies show that gold kiwi puree boosted NK cell activity in response to tetanus vaccine. Another study showed that certain immune-related gene sets were upregulated in people eating 3 kiwis per day. So genes relating to supporting immune function were enhanced their activity. And then there was a study in elderly individuals showed that eating 4 kiwis per day for a month resulted in reduced cold symptoms compared to eating 2 bananas per day. That's kind of like something you would expect, right? Because bananas, as far as their nutrient content, they're kind of more wimpy compared to kiwis. And so so obviously you get better results with kiwis. Do you have a question?
No, I was just going like this because I love
Okay,
kiwis.
All right. Sounds good. I love the enthusiasm. So ingestion in the kiwi group lasted only 1 to 2 days compared to 5 days in the banana group. There was a similar study in preschool kids, which is another susceptible population to infectious disease. So if you have kids, they're always getting sick, right, running around with the kids and picking up germs. But they did a study in preschool kids, showed that those eating the kiwis had nearly 50% lower risk of catching cold or flu compared to the banana group. In the previous study, those in the kiwi group did get significantly improved symptom severity. Even if they did get sick, they had less severe cold, fewer symptoms. But just one caveat to that is that just a few small percentage of children can be allergic to kiwis. Just a very small percentage, but it's something I thought I'd mention. 1 out of 150 children report being allergic to kiwis, so obviously you want to avoid any kids with allergies. Most people, it's great. Okay, so seaweed salad. Has anyone tried this? Seaweed salad? I love it. It's like, you guys gotta try this. Anyway, so, okay, so wakame is a type of seaweed commonly found in seaweed salad. There was a study showing that seaweed can substantially augment the replication potential of T cells. T cells are another type of key immune cells, also responsible for eliminating and destroying viruses and cancer cells in our body, as well as antibodies. So certain T cells specialize in destroying virus-infected cells and tumor cells, and the study showed that giving people infected with herpes virus about 2 grams of dried powdered wakame per day, which is about a 4th cup of seaweed salad, resulted in significant reduction or elimination of symptoms. Although the study didn't have a group that were not given the wakame. So it might not be the highest quality, but this is what they found. Study participants included those infected with various forms of herpes virus, including that which causes cold sores, genital herpes, chickenpox, shingles, mono. So they saw benefit in all of these. Immune function declines, so as I said, our immune function declines with age, right? Elderly people, they have already a declining immune system, so they're particularly vulnerable to respiratory infections and their complications like pneumonia, bronchitis, etc. So for the same reason, vaccine, as I mentioned, offers little or no protection to the elderly. And then they did a study in people over 60, those elderly individuals, showing that wakame can actually boost antibiotic production in response to a flu shot. And the wakame group received wakame extract daily for a month prior to the vaccination, and this is what they found. So in the wakame group, so this is the red line, the level of antibodies you need to be generated, in your body to have a successful response to the vaccination. And you can see that if they didn't change their diets, they didn't eat the wakame, they didn't reach that line. So it's a useless vaccination. Whereas in the wakame group, right, the goal is a 2.5-fold antibody boost, and this is that line. And the study indicates, obviously, that in the wakame group, a lot more people reach that successful immune response. So it indicates the addition of seaweed like wakame to augment immune system and reduce infection and other diseases. Okay, any questions? Okay, green tea. Who likes green tea? Awesome, yeah. All day long at work. I have like a 2-liter jug. Yeah, so there's numerous health benefits to drinking green tea, and I'll only be mentioning a few. But it's one of its benefits. It's broad, just like garlic. It has a broad antimicrobial properties, active against bacteria, viruses, other infectious organisms. So actually, there was a study that looked at just using it topically, just rubbing some green tea on genital warts, which is one of the most common venereal diseases in the world, actually. And the results, what they found was that just rubbing some green tea ointment resulted in elimination of the warts in more than half the cases. That's how potent those antimicrobial compounds are in green tea. Healthcare workers given green tea extract only had about 1/3 of flu infections compared to those given placebo. And in elderly nursing home residents, again, very susceptible population. And this is the elderly folks, especially like in nursing homes where they're really like not so mobile. The flu can have serious complications and consequences but the study showed that simply gargling with green tea would reduce the risk of flu infection by about 8-fold compared to gargling with plain water. By the way, so I'll be covering this later, but so gargling does have benefit. Does anyone know what gargling is, or does everyone know? Would anyone like to demonstrate gargling for us? No volunteers. I'll have to do it myself. Guys, what are you making me do?
Yeah, I know.
Right, so you just tilt your head back and blow bubbles. And what this does, swish it around your mouth. So this has topical antimicrobial action, right? And it will actually go into those mucous membranes where those pathogens are, and it'll help to wipe them out. It will also strengthen the immune cells in those very same membranes. it'll help to clear your throat from any infectious organisms. So it's a really great thing to do. But gargling green tea, and then you gargle it and then you drink it, right? Because green tea is good for you. Unless it's like really gross and you have a lot of mucus or something. But yeah, in general, you can drink it. But unlike antimicrobial drugs, green tea does not kill off viruses and both good and bad bacteria indiscriminately, right? So it targets these pathogens, these disease-causing organisms. It appears to work in part by bolstering our own immune defenses against invading pathogens and even tumor cells. So participants that drank 6 cups of green tea per day had up to a 15-fold increase in the production of this signaling molecule called interferon, which is a stimulating molecule that kind of activates our immune cells, and in as little as a week. That's just one study. There's so many studies on green tea. Another study showed that in hospitalized patients, 6 cups a day improved their their appetite, their gastrointestinal health, and so reduced length of stay in the hospital. In case you were wondering, coffee drinking had no such benefit, unfortunately. Well, coffee does have its own, benefits. It's not entirely so. Okay, any questions about that?
Does it matter if it's decaf or caffeinated for the green tea? Because they're like decaf and.
Oh, well, no, you don't want to drink the decaffeinated one. Get it in its natural form. So yeah, I mean, it has to be caffeinated because when they process it for decaffeination, there's also chemicals added to it. So you don't want to ever drink decaffeinated green tea. The caffeine level, it's not nearly as much as coffee, and there's other ingredients in green tea that balance that stimulating effect with the calming ingredients. So yeah, I mean, just but maybe not right before bedtime. Don't drink like a whole bunch of. Yeah.
So I like to put sugar in my tea. So does that cancel out the good stuff?
Sugar does not cancel out the good stuff, but sugar is its own problem. So you put too much sugar into anything, you'll have other worries that as a result of that, because too much sugar is not good for us either.
It's just sugar.
Right. But like a little half a whatever teaspoonful, or yeah.
honey.
Yeah, honey, sure. Unless you're diabetic or have some other health issues.
Does the speed at which you drink tea affect, like say, it's too fast?
No, I mean it won't affect it's like molecular interaction in the body, but it might like make you like cough or swallow too much gas.
Drinking anything else, right?
Yeah. I wouldn't like go.
No.
Drinking anything too fast is not good for you.
No.
So, but
So don't chug this.
right, and gargle with it. So take the time to kind of enjoy it. I will say since there's questions on what can cancel out the benefits, if you do put milk in there or any kind of dairy, it will actually cancel out a lot of the benefits. The reason is that dairy has like this kind of like viscous matrix that some of the active compounds in green tea will stick to, and that'll just prevent them from being absorbed by your body. So same thing with coffee, by the way. Coffee has benefits, it has antioxidants, but then if you put it with milk, same thing happens, right? These antioxidant compounds, they're not absorbed because they stick to this kind of gelatinous matrix and they just pass right through you.
But plant milk is good.
Oh yeah, but that's dairy milk, right? So you can add plant milk, almond milk, soy milk, oat milk, there's many milks to choose from. Okay. Okay, so gargling, right? I want to cover in a bit more detail. It's one of the best things to do to treat a sore throat. And what do you think? Does it work to prevent the common cold? What do you guys think?
Yes.
Very good. In Japan, to prevent respiratory infections like the common cold, gargling has been strongly recommended. I wonder why that's not the case here. Do you guys ever stop to question that? Why doesn't your doctor tell you to gargle?
You lose money.
You're onto something, my friend.
He does, just not with water though.
With what?
Listerine.
Listerine, wow.
A lot of swallowing afterwards though.
Don't do that, please. Don't do that. Why don't you ever see like a commercial on TV? Gargle. It'll prevent the cold. Why do you think that is? It's free, right? No one makes money from it. So you'll never hear about this kind of health advice anywhere, except maybe like in a talk like this, right? So it's cost effective, it's free to do, it's greatly beneficial. Like many virtually cost-free, simple, and effective modalities, it's not yet popular in the Western world for those reasons. That there's no incentive, there's no financial gain for anyone to tell you to gargle. There was a randomized control study in 2005 on gargling. They noted a significant drop in the incidence of the common cold in the group that gargled. Simple plain water gargling was found to be effective to prevent respiratory infections among healthy people. So it's a cost-free modality that would greatly enhance physical health, greatly benefit people both physically and economically around the world. But unfortunately, you don't really hear about this because no one has anything to gain by educating you about this. But imagine it prevents doctor visits, hospitalization. So obviously, it's a great thing. There was another study where 20,000 preschoolers were followed for 20 days. Another study, children in the group that gargled at least once a day. So what they found was that tap water gargling reduced the chance of a fever by about a third. And gargling with saline water or green tea lowered this risk even further by half for saline water and 2/3 for green tea. So green tea was the most effective, actually. The researcher concluded that gargling might not be effective in preventing, that gargling might be effective in preventing febrile diseases in children. Febrile diseases meaning those causing a fever. Any questions about gargling?
So gargling with salt and water and green tea, that's the best benefit?
Yeah, you can do just green tea, or you can do saline, but in that study they found it was even more effective with green tea.
What if you put salt in green tea?
If you like your green tea salty, be my guest.
I was gonna say it's gonna be salty.
Well, we don't know because they didn't study that, but it might, so you can try it and then
tell us.
Actually, you want to do a study? I'm gonna record what happens to you over. Yeah, you can use any kind of salt. Yeah.
Excuse me.
Okay, we're gonna have to set up an experiment.
Excuse me, do the water have to be warm?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be warm. It could just be room temperature.
Okay.
It can be warm if you like,
But warmer better than cold, right? Because cold would probably.
Well, just gargling with anything cold I don't recommend because I can actually lead to a sore throat. Right?
Yeah.
If it's just like mild, don't drink something ice cold. Gargle with something ice cold, right? But at least warm or room temperature.
Room
Is what you want. Yeah. Okay, so who knows what this is? What is she doing there? Yeah. Do you guys know why she's doing that? Like, what is this for?
For your congestion.
Yeah. So.
What? No, I don't know why she's doing that.
Yeah, so this is nasal irrigation. It's actually one of the most effective things you can do if you have allergies, nasal allergies, allergic rhinitis, hay fever. So it's one of according to the most prestigious collaboration of systematic reviews, it's one of the best therapies for allergies, sinus infection, even mild sinus infection. So the study is showing that those suffering from nasal allergies or sinus infection may benefit from simple, safe, low-cost, yet highly effective technique, just like gargling. Nasal irrigation. So you can use either this little irrigation bottle, or they have like little kettles, like whole mini pots you can get anywhere really. It's highly effective for relieving sneezing, runny nose, mild sinus pain, and fever due to sinus inflammation lasting no more than a week. You guys, does anyone get allergies here, like in the springtime?
My daughter.
Yeah. If you're not doing this, you should be. This is the first step.
Where do I get one of those things?
You can go on Amazon, go on eBay. Like they sell mini pot irrigation bottle.
Is that what you call it? Irrigation?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Or neti pot.
Sure, I've heard of that.
Yeah. You can even do it with your hands. I mean, this makes it more easy for you to do.
Sure.
Simply pour the saline water into one nostril so it flows out the other. So you can see it going one out the other. There's a lot of instructional videos on how to do this, so it's pretty simple.
I'll Google it.
Yeah. Make sure to clean the neti pot though. Or bottle between each use by washing with boiling water or microwaving for 2 minutes, because they found that people who didn't clean it and they had like severe sinus infections, they got reinfected with those same pathogens that they were rinsing out of their nose because they didn't clean their bottle. So that's the one caveat is make sure you're cleaning your irrigation well or neti pot. Yeah,
How
it's not
often can
recommended.
you do that?
What's that?
How often can you do that?
You can do that several times a day if you like, once a day.
I mean, for a week, for a whole, every day?
Yeah, as long as you have symptoms, you can keep doing it. Yeah, and it
It's
helps.
like a natural remedy, huh?
Do you
And,
have to do it solid water? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can use saline. You can use even put like 4 green tea bags in water. You can use that, but just like preferably previously boiled water, so it's not there's no chance of contamination.
Can you just use water?
Yes, you can use water as well.
Oh, okay.
So, so in this study they actually use saline water, and was shown to do all these good things. But if you use just, I would say it's probably a little safer to boil the water previously, not just to use tap water because it could be a little contamination. It's not recommended for severe infections or immunocompromised individuals. Just a little side note. Any questions about that? No? Okay, so we're done with nutrition for now. We're going to move on to sleep hygiene. Any questions about anything before we go? So, sleep. Who likes to sleep here? Yeah. How many hours of sleep do you guys think is healthy to get for a person?
7 to 8 hours.
Good. Yeah. So, sleep, it has, it's very important to maintain normal physiology and prevent diseases. Can anyone name like some of the functions of sleep? Like what does it help the body to do? Why is it needed?
Rest.
To get more energy for the next day.
Yeah.
You think, right?
Any other ideas? Good, so. Right, so adequate sleep duration quality is needed for proper immune system maintenance. Sleep deficiency leads to, among many other deleterious harmful effects, immune cell impairment, reduced, like, for example, T cell and K cell activity, and their numbers, so these are important immune cells. Adults need 7 to 8.5 hours per day. So too much sleep, not good either, right? But
it feels good.
The deepest and most restorative sleep which is necessary for immune system maintenance occurs mostly during the first 2.5 hours of sleep. That's the first third of the night, right? So you want to make sure that sleep is not interrupted, that you have a nice, beginning in your sleep cycle. Study conducted in which participants had cold virus distribution to their nostrils, and so those getting high quality sleep, which is 8 or more hours per day, were 3 to 5.5 times more likely to resist catching the cold. This is called the hypnogram. It's a little diagram of our sleep cycles. And you can see that the stage 4, which is the deep restorative sleep, that occurs in the first third of the night, first 2.5 hours or so. It's really important for immune function, maintenance, detox, repair, restoration. And then later on we go into dreaming, REM sleep, and so on. But yeah, that first part is really critical. So it's important to get good sleep, the amount of hours, the sleep quantity, and then also sleep quality, right? So that your sleep is basically not interrupted. Okay, but how do we resolve sleep difficulties? Does anyone have a problem with this? Where, maybe you have trouble falling asleep or waking up in the middle of the night?
I do.
So how do we do that? Well, if you think taking a sleeping pill is the answer,
no,
it's not. Actually, okay, there's a class of sleeping pills called hypnotics, and this is like, you might have heard Ambien, Lunesta, Restorel, many other drugs. It's actually called benzodiazepine, is the scientific kind of word. And the studies show that it's actually associated with 300 to 500,000 excess deaths in the US alone. And that even taking less than 18 pills per year, which is like 1.5 per month, not even 1 every day, 1.5 per month, is associated with 360% risk of death compared to those who don't use them. It's actually astonishing numbers. This number of deaths is more than automobile accidents, respiratory infections. It's a huge toll. So what do we do about sleep difficulties if we can't take these pills? There's something called sleep hygiene, which is healthy behaviors to promote and encourage good quality and quantity of sleep. And I'll just go through some points with you, not a comprehensive list, but this will, if you follow this, you're much more likely to prevent any sleep difficulties, and if you have them, to actually improve the quality of your sleep. So one is stick to a regular sleep schedule, even on weekends. Then get regular exercise. Avoid exercise at least an hour before bedtime though, because that can stimulate you. But you want to exercise kind of morning, afternoon, but not right before bedtime. Put your worries away when you go to bed, obviously. Try not to do something relaxing, take a lavender bath, listen to some Mozart, read a book that you enjoy, sing some worship music, something relaxing to put your worries away. Do something relaxing and enjoy before bed. Make your bedroom quiet and comfortable, and avoid any meal really. Right before bedtime is going to kind of affect sleep quality. So especially sugary meals, and this includes not just like cookies and candy, but starchy foods like potatoes, pasta, rice, bread, right? All those break down very quickly in your stomach. They raise the blood sugar, and what happens is your body's like, oh, I have a lot of blood sugar, time to turn on the insulin. So all the blood sugar then gets, leaves the blood, and your body at 3 a.m. freaks out. I have no blood sugar. Wake up! What are you doing to me? And you wake up at 3 a.m. As a result, as your sympathetic nervous system kicks in. So yeah, no meals before bedtime. Use your bedroom only for sleep. And those of you who are married, obviously, love making. So if you don't fall asleep within 15 to 20 minutes, don't lie around, but get up and go to another room, try a relaxing activity, and then return to bed only when you feel drowsy. So this will help. Read my lecture slides. That'll slowly put you to bed, and then you can come back and fall asleep. Do not nap during the day. If you must nap, do only for half an hour during the early afternoon, because that again will impair sleep later. When you're supposed to at night. Avoid alcohol, nicotine, caffeine, any kind of stimulant, especially close to bedtime. And okay, so spend time outdoors in the morning. There's a hormone in our body called melatonin. So this hormone is activated and it gets produced by this gland in our brain called the pineal gland, and it's a signaling molecule to our body that to get us drowsy, prepare us for sleep. When we see light, like early morning, daylight, through our eyes, our body gets a signal to start producing this sleep hormone, melatonin. And early in the morning, it begins to start producing, and then by the time it's nighttime, the levels have peaked, and that signals to our body it's time to go to bed. So that's how that works. So if you don't get early morning light exposure, I encourage you to try to do this. And then avoid bright lights from TV, computer, video games, like blue light especially before bed, because that's stimulating as well to the sympathetic nervous system. Bedroom should be completely dark while sleeping. Avoid any fluids at least an hour prior to bedtime. If you're waking up a lot, to go to the bathroom for longer. Any questions about any of those?
What about taking melatonin supplements?
Yeah, melatonin supplements, well, let's put it this way. If you compare it to the hypnotic drugs, right, they're not nearly as toxic, but the melatonin supplements, so it's a hormone, right? If you're taking in a hormone, your body has this delicate network designed to balance all kinds of hormones in our body, and you're introducing basically a hormone from outside the body into this network, and this will inevitably can have consequences. So it can throw other hormones off balance, basically. So whenever you're taking in like a foreign hormone like that, it can have some health consequences, some bad health consequences. Another thing is that a lot of the melatonin supplements, they're actually contaminated with heavy metals, for example, like cadmium. So yeah, I don't recommend it. For my patients, there's various like foods and herbs that promote sleep. That is much safer, especially if they're from a high quality source. Yeah. So.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. So remember the lifestyle factors that influence immune function, right? We talked about nutrition today and sleep, and then part 2. I hope you will all join me for part 2. It's just beginning, folks. We have so much studies to cover. So there's thousands of these coming out every week, and I'm just gonna, all I'm doing is summarizing the evidence here. So we're gonna cover in part 2 supplements, exercise, stress, state of mind, and the mind-body connection, and how that can support your immune function. You have a question?
You said there are some fruits and herbs that help you to sleep. What are they?
Yes, well, okay, so I can name a few examples, but you have to keep in mind that, first of all, you have to get it from a high quality source. So just because, if you get something in the form of a pill or, whatever it is, a liquid, and it says, something on the bottle, let's say you want to get kava root, as an example. You don't know what's in that bottle. Just because it says kava root on there doesn't mean that's actually in there, right? So that's something I'll be talking about in part 2 is like supplement quality. But, just to give you an example, if it is a high quality source, there's kava, there's valerian, there's passion flower, there's spiny juju, there's magnolia leaves, there's valerian, there's California pop. There's a lot of herbs depending on the type of sleep challenge you're facing that will be, help you with that. So, and if they're high quality, there's something that can help people with sleep. Yeah.
What if I have like insomnia?
Yeah, so that's all, the sleep hygiene points would, I would start with that, make sure you're doing all of those. And oftentimes that helps on its own.
Okay.
Okay, so we have the nutrition toolbox. Does anyone remember can anyone name one of the foods that can support our immune function that we covered? This is just a summary. Mike?
Broccoli.
Broccoli, good. Anyone else?
Blueberries.
Blueberries, excellent.
Kiwi.
Anyone else?
Mushrooms.
Mushrooms. All right, you guys are good. I can see you're paying attention. Yeah, so mushrooms, white button or Chinese, seaweed salad, specifically wakame they studied, green algae, and specifically chlorella, kiwis, green tea, which again, you can gargle and then drink as well, cardamom with black pepper, cruciferous vegetables. What are cruciferous vegetables?
Cabbage.
Yeah, broccoli.
Good.
Kale.
Yeah, so think cabbage family. Okay, cabbage, kale, Brussels sprouts, yeah, collards. So all of those are really important, so you want to eat those every day. Sprinkle some mustard seed powder on there, even better. Blueberries and acai berries, and then 9 more servings of fruits and vegetables per day in general. And then nasal irrigation, we talked about that. So these are just some recipes for you guys. This is a soba noodle, which is like buckwheat noodle soup with coconut curry. Yeah, so some very tasty, healthy meals. This is a veggie soup. Again, the ingredients are on there. And this is a tofu vegan bowl with some of these immune supporting ingredients. Tabbouleh. Mexican vegan bowl. So there's more healthy recipes you can find on these websites. And of course we have some really delicious food for you guys if you want to stay and help yourself. So, okay, so this is a we didn't really talk about breathing techniques and other lifestyle things that support immune function, but we will cover that in part 2. So I'll save that for part 2. Okay, so did we achieve our learning objectives? Did we get an understanding of how our lifestyle factors affect our immune system function? Yes? Feel good about that?
Yes.
Did we get an understanding of how specific foods can be used to boost immune function and ability to apply this knowledge in preparing food? How do you guys feel?
Yes.
Yes? Wonderful. Did you become familiar with simple, low or no cost lifestyle related tools such as sleep hygiene and various foods that can bolster our immune function?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, thank you so much. That's the end of my talk.
Get more food.